Greetings. Welcome to the Dr. J Vlog series. It's Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. Wednesdays are devoted to emotional well-being and relationships. Today's Wednesday Wellness Checkup addresses the issue of gratitude. Keen observers among you will note the parentheses in the part one. That's because I just felt that there's too much to talk about with respect to gratitude to try to cram everything into one 30-minute or less vlog. Instead, I thought it'd be best to break this up into two different parts. So, yes, next week, next Wednesday, we'll look at gratitude part two. So, let's proceed, shall we? Now, I guess one thing we might ask is, aren't you glad you're here? But if we were asking that, it would actually be a bit misleading. The basic question really should be, aren't you grateful to be here? Or are you grateful for the life that you have? Or are you grateful for your family? Or just in general, what are you grateful for? Now, if that's a difficult question, then today's vlog should be immensely helpful. But even if it's not a difficult question, I hope you'll still benefit from continuing to expand your understanding and your appreciation for the concept of gratitude. So, what do we mean by gratitude? Well, the American Psychological Association defines gratitude as a sense of thankfulness and happiness in response to a tangible benefit, for example, a gift or a favor, or fortunate happenstance, for example, a beautiful day. I actually think that's a bit too narrow or clinical, one might say, and that there's almost a transactional nature to that definition. It's more of a response to everyday situations or the immediacy of one's circumstances. And that's fine. I don't disagree with that. I'm not downplaying the importance of being grateful or expressing our appreciation for the small favors that we encounter. It's essential to our well being, and it's essential because we should also extend the gift of reciprocating when possible in positive ways. Now, um, I'm merely thinking that there's also a deeper and a broader sense within which we might think about gratitude, and some of our expressions capture this more profound sense of gratitude. It's when we hear people say things like they're grateful for every day that they're granted on this earth. It's a, it's a fairly profound statement if you think about it. Or maybe they're grateful for their health, or they're grateful for the children that they have, and so on. In my understanding, true gratitude stems from an acknowledgement of the goodness and the blessings we enjoy in our lives. Perhaps a general awareness and appreciation for the full range of conditions and the connections that enhance our well being and the joyfulness of our lives. The clean water that we can drink from a fountain and the availability of food are obvious examples that many of us just take for granted, when in fact we should be deeply grateful. I wish that someone had taken the time, certainly when I was a child, much younger, to explain the true purpose for saying a blessing, for example, at mealtime. Now, we had a blessing. I grew up in a Catholic family, and we certainly used the specific blessing, bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts which we are about to receive, and so forth. So, nothing wrong with that. We were supposed to understand, though, that the blessing and all of our blessings were a gift from God. Again, I don't disagree with that. It's certainly the case. Um, and it's true of the grander religious traditions in general, especially those that espouse the Creator as the ultimate source. What we didn't really talk about, or perhaps what we didn't fully appreciate, was the extent to which that blessing really isn't just about God. but it's also about everything else that flows from God, if that's your belief, or that we experience as human beings on the planet, whatever our belief system. What am I talking about? So, in other words, I'm merely suggesting that it'd be helpful to think about or to expand our expressions of gratitude to recognize both nature's bounty, and so that we don't take that for granted or that we don't destroy that which gives us life in abundance. That's very clearly a sentiment that's shared by indigenous peoples in many parts of the world. But also the long chains of anonymous workers who help to produce and distribute the bounty at our table. Most of us are no longer farmers and we're not hunters and gatherers. And so these invisible people we have to rely on all over the world, quite frankly, in this day and age. And it's from their labors, again, so often anonymous, unseen, and unknown, that we enjoy the benefit, the privilege of having the foods that we do consume on a daily basis. We might extend our gratitude or our thanks specifically to the service of our food, and that's important too. Most of us have at least enough awareness or appreciation, or basic tact, if you will, to thank whoever served us. And if you can't even do that, well, then it's probably time to take a serious look at yourself. Uh, and so, all that said, learning simply to say thank you on a regular basis would certainly be a good start. And maybe that's a basic assumption that we all have. But what if you're not accustomed to that practice? That you might not have learned how to say thank you or to mean it on a regular basis. Now, most of us can certainly manage a reasonable number of thank yous in a variety of different contexts, most everyday situations. It comes quite naturally, almost secondhand at this point. But I'd merely add that beyond just the perfunctory thank you, or the quick and mindless, almost thoughtless thanks, you can actually recognize further, specifically, why you're thanking someone, and perhaps repeat or state for them clearly what you're thanking them for, or how much you appreciate what they've done for you. Now, again, that doesn't work in every context. It might not be appropriate. But just taking a little bit of extra time to express more specifically what you're thanking someone for or what you appreciate about what they've done can make a huge difference, both in their lives and in your own life. And on the nonverbal side of the equation, uh, again, speaking for myself, I'll often express gratitude through engagement, active listening, nods of approval. We can also do that as well with the inflection of our voices or the enthusiasm that we express in responding. We can look into someone's eyes and we can smile. We can even hug the person if that's appropriate as an expression of gratitude. Or a variety of different ways in which we can sort of express our appreciation for the deeper sense, uh, the gratitude that shows that we're truly engaged in the experience and we appreciate the experience, the reality of the other, of their actions, of what they've done, of what they mean to us. Again, I'm not meaning to overstate the case or suggest that every time we encounter someone, we should, you know, kneel down and praise their existence and so forth. No, I mean, obviously anything can be taken to an extreme. I'm simply suggesting that there are actual ways that you can practically expand your daily expressions of gratitude that don't require too much effort or energy beyond what you might normally do otherwise. And I'm simply saying that in saying goodbye to people or in thanking them, we can give off a little bit more. And each time we do that, we are enhancing their lives and our lives as well. Even if it's not a thank you situation, by wishing somebody to have a pleasant day or to have a blessed day, whatever your wording, whatever you prefer to say. All of this conveys to the individual, conveys to the other your appreciation. And it's an expression of gratitude. And so these are very simple and direct ways in which we can expand our range of thanks. And indeed, as we do that, and to the extent that we're able to do that, we move ever closer to living in a state of gratitude. Okay? And this is a truly powerful sentiment. When we recognize that the sources of our goodness, the things that we truly must appreciate in our lives, lie outside of ourselves, then we can be truly grateful toward others, towards our Creator, toward animals and trees and rocks and things, right? And much more. But it's not that we should be grateful toward ourselves. That's not, we ourselves are not our source of gratitude. Again, it depends on your belief system. If we're ultimately from a creator, for example, then our gratitude stems from the efforts of the creator. We can be thankful for our existence. And indeed, whatever our beliefs, religiously or spiritually, I would hope we could all agree that we should be grateful for the opportunity to be here. Some might not feel that way. And if that's the case, that's something that we need to look into. And it's actually something I'll address a little bit more next week as well. Okay, so ultimately then we want to recognize that there are many different sources external to us and spend some time thinking about why they matter. And that's what we mean when we say we should count our blessings. And as we do that, we move gradually and inevitably toward living in a state of gratitude. We might even add another adjective to talk about deep gratitude. But there's actually a parallel concept, dispositional gratitude. So dispositional gratitude refers to a generalized tendency to recognize and respond with grateful emotion to the roles of other people's benevolence and the positive experiences and outcomes that one obtains. That's from McCullough and colleagues from 2002. Indeed, according to Passmore and Oates from 2016, gratitude encourages people to focus on the positive aspects of their lives, while simultaneously overcoming the negativity, the disappointment, perhaps anger, and resentment. Gratitude can definitely help us in more ways than we can imagine. For example, the research shows that gratitude can help us to build and maintain healthier relationships with others, resulting in hope, in life satisfaction, and more pro-social attitudes and behaviors in general. In addition, research shows that there are many personal benefits that include, broadly speaking, without getting into the details, our own emotional and psychological well-being. I'll leave some links in the description below with respect to some of the research that you might be interested in reading further. But for now, that's just a brief overview of the benefit of gratitude and living or striving to live in a state of gratitude. In our quietest and most reflective moments, surely most of us would be able to identify a tremendous range of possible sources of gratitude. It's in your own personal interest in terms of your general well-being and happiness to literally spend time thinking about that for which we are truly grateful. In meditation or in prayer, in the solitude of our thoughts, while simply filling in the time as we travel to work or to an appointment. And let's be honest, some sources of gratitude resonate more deeply in our lives than others. And sometimes we only become aware of our gratitude in due time, not always in the immediacy of the moment. Which brings us to the greatest challenge then that we have to confront. How can you be grateful in the face of death, doom, destruction, or horrific events? Or when we encounter genuinely hurtful or difficult people, especially those intent upon harming us or harming our children or our people, or those who already have done such things to us. How can we be grateful under these most painful circumstances? Well, that can be quite the challenge. So, for example, my initial response historically to the worst people that I've encountered or situations has been anger and frustration. It's not uncommon. In my worst moments, I've blamed others for the misery in my life. I've blamed the people that I grew up with, in some instances, for hurting me or ruining my childhood. These cycles of blaming others, or the tendency, or the almost knee jerk reaction to blame others for our own suffering, the pain or the hurt that we might experience, all these sorts of things, uh, end up refracting back upon us. And again, this applies at any level of blaming, whether we're blaming people in our personal lives, whether we're blaming the politicians that we don't like for the destructive policies or the harmful policies that we think they're enacting, when we blame the racists who are sowing hatreds out there for peoples and hurting others, when we blame God for creating a world where there's so much pain and injustice. And so only slowly over the course of my lifetime did I realize that the blame game is always a losing proposition. We always lose the blame game. What do I mean by that? In other words, the blame game, at least in my experience, it doesn't lead to peace of mind. It doesn't lead to happiness. It doesn't lead to enlightenment. Usually quite the opposite. Okay? So once you realize that, then you can perhaps start to do something about that disconnect. And that's something I believe that's absolutely essential. And that is to eliminate all expectations of anyone and everything in life. No, that's not what I mean. You still have to have standards. You still have to have expectations, of course, right? You have to have morals to live by. And by the way, the morals that most peoples and cultures live by are almost universally similar, if not identical to one another. So most cultures have a set of standards that we'd almost all consider to be almost universal. Yes, there are some particularities, there are some specific differences from one culture to the next, and sometimes in the greatest of the teachings, we'll find some, again, contradictions and so forth. But let's not overanalyze it. If we just think in the broader terms about standards of living and the broader morals to which peoples everywhere tend to subscribe to, there's a remarkable amount of consistency in that regard. So we do have to have standards. We do have to hold ourselves accountable and others to those standards to a certain degree, but always within reasonable limits. And I would take it a step further to suggest that it's not a matter of eliminating standards, but we can practice different aspects of stoicism in confronting those inevitable situations where people may fall short of our standards, where we may fall short, where we recognize the difficulties and the challenges that some of these situations present for us. And so there are ways of coping in the immediacy of the moment that are healthier than others. So I'm not going to get into Stoicism today. We'll talk more about that another time as well. I'm just suggesting that there is a way to both continue to maintain standards and yet at the same time recognize that there might be some adaptive strategies to coping with when standards are not met, when moral statutes are violated, and so forth. There are formal mechanisms, obviously, to respond to some things, like dealing with violations of the law or what have you. But my point is simply that there are a variety of other ways that we can cope that don't necessarily involve lowering or eliminating our standards, but that are nonetheless healthier as well. And part of that, though, is a reflection of, or can be done most effectively through cognitive reframing. Okay? So, this is, I think, the essential thing that we all must do, at least from time to time. The unpleasant encounters that we have with others are obviously challenging. And yet, at the same time, we have the capacity to rethink and to reframe what has happened, at least to a certain extent. Okay? It might even be something as so simple as, well, I'm just going to recalibrate my expectations, given the situation, given the limitations or the limited resources that some people might have at their disposal, whatever the specifics that might be involved. And again, that can be quite healthy, especially if you can do the cognitive reframing without attaching negative affect or judgments. Well, that's, for example, if a person never smiles or says hello to you, you might think, oh, well, that's rude. Or you might just simply say, well, that's okay. You can accept that perhaps that's the way that they are. Don't have to take it personally. Or just some people are less affable, less aware, less engaged, for a variety of different reasons. And if you understand that or recognize that up front, again, without casting blame, without judging them too harshly, I mean, again, there may be times where you have to make some judgment, especially when it comes around when you're dealing with sort of very functional or instrumental things that have to be done. I get that. But my point in general is that you can accept people as they are, again, within reasonable limits. And then as you recalibrate and reframe the situation, oftentimes what happens is that that same person or the situation that you encounter the next time ends up leading to some surprising results. Now, one of the most profound examples of that, and there was nothing negative about this. I was an assistant teacher at a school for children with special needs. I was about 19 years old. And one little girl, she was autistic and she never spoke. And I didn't take that personally. Obviously, it was a professional diagnosis. We worked with her in various ways. And one of the things that she liked to do as children at 6 years of age love to do in general is to play out in the playground. So again, she couldn't really interact with the other children in terms of her verbal capacities, and she tended to keep to herself. But she did like to have somebody in her presence, and she certainly liked to have somebody, for example, pushing her on the swing. And so I worked with her, or I mean, many of the students for a couple of months, and then I never expected anything, right? I did what I thought, what I was taught professionally to do. I engaged in a professional manner. I gave, uh, I responded to whatever cues that the children were giving off. And in this little girl's case, I certainly, had no problem. I enjoyed pushing her on the swing, and she had her fun. And just out of nowhere one day, after I'd pushed her on that swing and we were coming in from playground, or not as we were coming in, just as I helped her get down from the swing, she spoke. The only word I ever heard her say. She said, "Thank you." There was no expression, there was no smile, there was no effusive praise or anything else. But the word "thank you" came out of her mouth. Now, again, if she'd never said thank you, how do I explain? I knew she was grateful for what we were doing for her, for what I was doing, my few minutes a day with her, over several weeks. So I didn't do anything particularly special, but what I did, indeed, from her standpoint, was special. Right? So again, I don't know. I can't get inside of her head. I sensed that I was doing the right thing. She certainly confirmed that with that one word, which just spoke volumes, shall we say. Okay. So, so what about gratitude then, in terms of these people who may not be able to express themselves the way we would like or the ways that we would expect? Would we really be grateful? Can we be grateful? Should we be grateful for such people? Well, again, we can cognitively reframe our experiences accordingly. Okay. And that includes in those times where we encounter people who are quite difficult to deal with by any objective measure. There are some people that are real, as I put them in shorthand expression, can be real a-holes. Sometimes I've been the a-hole, but you understand my point, right? So, how can you be grateful then, you know, for others in our lives who make it so difficult for us? The reframing helps us to recognize that those others, actually, let me put it this way, the ones that we sort of experience as creating such difficulties or who are rude to us or harmful to us even, they can actually help us then to realize and appreciate all the other people we have in our lives that are not making things difficult for us. So, in a way, we can be grateful even to the difficult people when we recognize the many others in our lives who are quite the opposite, right? Who reach out in kindness and nourish our souls. Okay. And I immediately think about how we can express that. What happens when we realize that we're in a position to extend our gratitude, if we think about it, to others in our lives. So I think immediately about not just that I love my wife and my children, although that's certainly true, but rather how deeply and profoundly grateful I am for my wife, for my children's partners, and so on. And that gratitude extends further to the members of my family in general, or those who have been angels in my life, to the friends that I've been blessed to have, for some of them for almost my entire life, and of course the many friends and family members and co-workers and others who have passed on. I've been grateful to have so many others in my life who are no longer with us. And I'm even grateful just for the simple fact that I can walk into a classroom a few times a week and meet with and work with and teach and learn from about 100 university students every week. Now, this isn't an Oscar speech, right? So I'm not going to try to recite a list of everyone I'd like to thank. And inevitably, I'd forget some people and they'd be offended and so forth. But you understand the general idea here. But I should also mention my producers, since this is the Oscars. No, it's not, right? That is my late father and my late mother. Were they the perfect parents and did we have the perfect family growing up? No, certainly not. Not by any means, but I am truly grateful, first and foremost, that they brought me into this world. They didn't have to. And that they provided for myself and our family as best they could. And that um, I'm even grateful for their flaws. That is to say, what I learned from them, both in a positive sense, but also what I took from them, when I observed when they were less than perfect. And I remember thinking about how I could benefit. I didn't perhaps frame it that way when I was a child, but I remember thinking in general how much I benefit from knowing, how I would do things differently. So, for better for worse, my parents certainly helped me to be a better parent. And then, of course, even then, I wasn't perfect either, right? So we can be thankful and grateful to those for learning from others how to be more patient, how to be more loving, how to communicate more effectively, uh, and learning from how to cope with difficult situations that some people are going to present us with, right? So, I mean, in my case, like my parents were smokers, and that's not particularly healthy. Both of them were smokers as I was growing up, at least. And I'm grateful in the sense that I learned that that's something that I didn't want to do with my own life, right? And so we can be grateful then to people we encounter for reminding us, at least occasionally, of what we don't want to do with our lives, or maybe even how we don't want to treat others. So if you find yourself starting to wallow in misery or blame someone for ruining your day or ruining your life, gratitude can be the perfect antidote. Rather than complain or continue to feel bitter, recognize the tape that's running inside of your head and indeed try replacing that tape. Rewind it, set it aside, but put in a new tape with a new narrative, a different story. What might you be grateful for, even in the smallest ways, right at that moment? And here's one strategy that always works for me, at least when I encounter the proverbial a hole in some context or another. And again, hopefully it's not me being the a hole. I immediately reframe the encounter to express gratitude for my own circumstances, for not being saddled with the burdens or the troubles that that other person's obviously experiencing. Again, that's not to ignore the fact that in the extreme, I might have to protect myself from others or from harm. We're all going to confront dangerous situations, to be sure. And there might be times where we have to call the police or what have you. Okay. But there's a part of me that's always grateful too that I've been spared the demons or whatever possesses some folks to act as they do, or I've been spared the hatred that poisons some people's minds. And I'm grateful not because I'm comparing myself to others and see how much better I am. That's not the point. Um, I'm grateful because I've been blessed with people in my life who do shine their lights more brightly and who do care about me and my well being. And that's not everyone. Again, they're perhaps struggling with their own issues. I'm blessed because I have others in my life. I'm blessed because I have a home with running water and heat in the winter, right? And so on. And I think about that miserable person. I do. Again, maybe at that exact moment, I may not be quite as generous, but I do think about that person. And I pray, too, that they might experience blessings and enlightenment. I pray that they, too, might experience gratitude and might even eventually then change their ways. I am not responsible for that, but I certainly don't wish them harm. I don't wish them dead. I don't wish, in my view, they've already been damaged enough. Okay? So their unwarranted and maybe even at times vicious attacks upon myself or others just reveals how damaged they are. And it's clear then, in my view, that those people need help and they do need prayers. And as I say, maybe in my idealism, they'll eventually come to see the light or change their ways, but who knows? And indeed, so we're all going to feel overwhelmed at times, stressed out with too many obligations. Imagine having to post a new vlog every day of the year, right? Knowing full well that this is what you've promised, even though you've got your regular full-time job and family obligations and the normal things that all of us have to do. So why the heck would you spend a couple of hours every day now committed to putting out a blog that's going to be seen by 10 or 20 people or most, or whatever the case may be, right? Isn't that just going to overwhelm you more? Well, yeah, if you put it that way, but then you need to flip the script. And instead, I say, I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm grateful for the energy that I have available. I'm grateful to have something to do in the wee hours of the morning because I don't sleep through the night and haven't for probably 30 years. Actually, ever since I had kids. That's why to this day I still hate my children. No, I don't. I love them, but it was when I had kids, and I was a stay-at-home dad in part, when they were young, and had to get up every night. And ever since then, I've never been a great sleeper, to be honest with you. So, and I've tried all kinds of things. So, you name it, from therapies to sleep clinics to certain drugs to, you name it. I've tried everything over the years. Okay, so I'm not complaining about that. So instead, I've embraced my insomnia, my inner insomniac self. And what I mean by that is that rather than, complain or be tired, say, gee, I'm tired, I don't get enough sleep, or worry about the negative effects. Instead, I think to myself, well, first of all, I'm grateful for the hours that I do sleep. And then if I'm ever able to sleep more than 3 or 4 hours straight, I'm just ecstatic, right? So I'm on top of the world. But in addition, what I've learned is that it's okay getting up and spending a couple of hours doing something else, and indeed doing this blog series. I'm grateful because this gives me something to do for a couple of hours when I can't sleep, and I feel like I'm doing something good in the world, right? So I'm making use of the time uh, to do something that I think might be of some value or that I believe in. And quite frankly, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to do in the first place, if that makes sense, right? I'm grateful to our son Ryan for helping to set up this contraption and all the technical stuff behind recording and uh, doing a vlog series and what have you. I know very little about the technical aspects. Ryan knows much more. And even here, he knows, I know that we're limited with the technology and the resources that we have in terms of what I can do, but he's already taught me a lot. I'm grateful for my videographer, Akira Patterson, and the work that she's done in the last year for me on some of my other videos and the music videos that I've done, but also in terms of just putting the captions on many of the vlog series on a daily basis, almost daily basis, right? So I'm thankful for these different aspects and these different people. And so, yeah, I may be stressed out at times, like 21 Pilots. Some of you know that reference, but I'm truly grateful to, as I've just explained. And I look at the inbox, my email, and I think, oh my gosh, wow. You can say, how are you going to tackle all of these messages? How are you going to get back to all of these people, right? Or worse, why are so many people bothering me? Everybody's asking me for something. Um, and so rather than think of it that way, I do, again, just the opposite. I reframe the situation. And here's what I do quite seriously. Cool. I've got a lot to do today. And look at my inbox. I got a lot of people who need some help too. All right. That's quite a challenge. And I love it because I'm going to make a commitment. I'm going to be determined to get through all these emails and to respond to everyone with seriousness, with appreciation, and to the best of my limited abilities. Do I always get back to everybody? No, I ain't perfect. I do the best that I can, but I make a genuine, concerted effort. Every once in a while, I have to put an email or two aside. I don't like to, but there's some circumstances that are, if you will, beyond my control. So I have to make the executive decision. But most of the time, and with most emails in that inbox, I address every single issue and every single person, again, to the best of my ability. If I were to ever become famous or whatever, and thousands of people were emailing me, yeah, I need an assistant or a team of assistants. I'm sure that's what other people have, right? But at least for now, and in my small corner of the world, I'm able to manage. And I'm thankful for that. Mm. And then there could be situations, and there are, where I open things up and it's an empty inbox, right? I'm still grateful, but of course in a different way. Cool, I have some free time now, or I can tackle another project I've been putting off, or finally I have some time to devote to something else that I truly value, that I love. Or wow, now I can go out to lunch with my wife. I can meet her at noon, or whatever the case may be, right? You understand what I'm saying. So either way, it's still a blessing. that inbox, that email, that digital environment allows us to be connected in many important ways with all kinds of people and in ways that, we couldn't previously. I view that as a positive. And more importantly, I view what I'm doing in responding to my insomnia, to the inboxes, to generally feeling overwhelmed by reframing it in a positive way. Thank goodness I have stuff to do. Thank goodness I have people and organizations and so forth that I'm connected to and causes. Helps you get up every day. And I'm truly grateful for all of these things. Okay. And then finally, what about the greatest of life challenges? You've just lost your job, your health. You've been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. You lost your home to an LA fire or what have you. You've lost a loved one. How can we be grateful for such things? How can we be grateful when our lives are turned completely upside down or when we're confronted with the greatest challenges imaginable? Well, we'll answer those questions next week in part 2 of the vlog series on gratitude. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for your presence. I truly do appreciate it. And until next time, until next we meet, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives and nurture love in your hearts. Bye bye.